Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to my LEGO reviews. In today's video, we shall be reviewing set number 40581, Bionicle Tahu and Takua. Originally released in 2023 as a standalone promotional set, it comes with 219 pieces in 4 bags and 0 minifigures. Alright, so before I review the set itself, I think it might be good to do a brief word on the packaging, as I don't normally talk about it in these reviews, but I think it's justified as it's an allusion to the original packaging of the Toamata. And even if it's a box as opposed to a canister, it still honestly really sells the aesthetic, and I think it does a fair enough job being an allusion to that packaging, even if it's not 100% accurate. Now, it should be obvious, but the set has 4 more pieces than the original, as made from regular system LEGO pieces, as opposed to the big specialized ones, which no doubt will please AFOLs or adult fan of LEGOs who always disliked those, while at the same time angering OG Bionicle fans who actually really enjoyed those very specialized pieces. If only there was some sort of character and creature building system that bridged the gaps between both systems. If only it hadn't become, death, as neither groups really liked it that much, leading it to withering away. Oh man. Jokes and fandom problems aside, the pieces are actually very decent, and you get a good collection of a lot of useful pieces with plenty of red slopes, some very neat iron ingots in orange, and a pair of really beautiful printed slopes, one on red for Tahu and the other on teal, which, to be frank, is arguably the best way to depict masks without making a specialized brick. I also liked the Nexo Knight's shield pieces in tan, but what about what these pieces build? How is that? First, we got this little dark tan circle with a Lego egg piece in regular tan and a trio of 1x1 dark gray pieces that I think are meant to represent the Amaja Nui or the Amaji circle, which in universe were these circles of sand used by the elder Turaga to tell stories of their people's history. Neat, but sadly it is admittedly I think the weakest part of the set, especially without contacts, as it's just an egg with some pieces. But I did enjoy it, and it is a fun allusion to anyone who is a Bionicle fan, and it looks pretty neat, even if it has a pretty simple build. Going to the next largest build, we got a surfboard that Tahu can ride thanks to the pair of pin pieces, and beneath that is a pair of shield pieces used to attach to another build we'll get to. Sure, technically speaking, it's meant to represent Tahu's surfboard, but it is a slightly different color than I think others have done. I don't mind though, I think it just looks phenomenal, and the dark tan works as it's a very neutral color. It looks like a rock he's riding on. Going back to those shields, they can be used to attach to the next build, which is a lava-filled pedestal that looks very warm thanks to the usage of Keat orange, regular orange, and translucent orange that really looks like lava. The surrounding is pitch black pieces that only contrast further with the orange, as well as helping to invoke the feeling of obsidian, so it really does seem volcanic. And of course, it can stand on its own, but you really want to put the surfboard on there for maximum effectiveness. And I've seen some people say that maybe the surrounding should have also been tanned, but I don't know. I think the black works better, if only because it better highlights with the orange. But now let's cover the real stars of the set, the two heroes. Starting with Takua, his figure draws from the Matoran build of the original 2001 release of the Matorans, which were sold as McDonald's toys that had very little articulation. Starting with the head, you got a sort of false face beneath the mask, which alludes to the maskless heads of the OG Matoran, while the translucent yellow doesn't allow actual light piping, i.e., unlike the originals where light would go through the eyes. I do think it's very neat touch. Plus, the printing on the mask has a bit of reflection to it, so it very emulates the light you would see. Speaking of the mask, while yes, it is teal instead of the light blue in the original, I don't think that really matters, and it is attached by two studs to the head, meaning that while pretty solid, it also means it can't really be knocked off the way that masks could be in the original release. But I think that's actually good because usually those mask gimmicks would only be used when you would have like two players fighting with it. Like for example, you'd have two Nui Jagas and they would try and bash each other's masks off. Because neither of these figures are meant to be fighting each other, the loss of this mask removal feature really isn't all that important. Going down to the body, it has a simple but solid build, and thanks to the ball joint used for the neck, has way more articulation than any set of the time. The arms can rotate around, again, more articulation than ever before. Each hand is a clip piece that can hold a black circular plate, and while it lacks the disc launching gimmick of the original, I still think it's kind of neat looking, and the extra articulation more than makes up for it. Going back to the back, he has his backpack, which is a solid build, but the connection can have it wobble / become misaligned. Going further down to the yellow legs that sort of remind me of those of baby ducks, and again, due to having better articulation than the original, it's just better and can be put into a walking pose relatively easily. Overall, I think this is a good little fellow that is a massive upgrade from the original Matorans and is a great reimagining of a classic character. But now let's go on to the bigger of the two, the main character of the set, Tahu. So here is Tahu, and here's a quick size comparison to a minifigure and a Bionicle set. And much like last time, let us start with the head. It has far superior articulation to the original in terms of neck and has a similar build, but uses light gray for his head and a translucent pink piece instead of a trans yellow one. Going down to the torso, the chest has a really interesting black axle ball, which is a direct allusion to the original build. I also found the robustness, despite the parts used, really neat, and they use these sort of minifigure frying pan pieces to create beams that give off the sort of biomechanical vibe of Bionicle. Going to the back, it sadly has no gear function or even a visual allusion to it, which is a shame, but is understandable given the smaller scale of the build. This lack of anything on the back also allows you to fit Takua, who can be attached to his back, which, yeah, while a bit flimsy at points, is a great allusion to the first Bionicle movie, The Mask of Light. Going to his arms, the top half of both with the shoulder articulation is really a step up from the original and has a pair of black hinges that sort of act like the shoulder pieces that were used in the original Toamata. And the upper arm itself is pretty simple with an orange cheese slope. There is elbow articulation, but it's a hinge and not a ball joint, which is a shame, but more than the original figure had, so, still an upgrade. Going down to the lower arms, on the right one it's a mighty claw. That is cool looking, but doesn't really do much. and doesn't have articulation, unlike the original. But that wasn't such a huge loss. The left hand is a lot more spiny and orange and has a clip piece with which Tahu can hold a flaming sword. That, while yes, smaller than the original one and honestly not as cool, I still think it looks decent if a bit utilitarian. Going down the torso, we see that he has waist articulation, which the original didn't have, and man, it's neat. Really lets you do a bunch of cool poses with the guy, such as leaning forwards, leaning backs, and doing a JoJo stuff. Continuing down to his upper legs, they're pretty thin and not much to say, though I like the orange pieces that are metal bars, now in orange. They give a knee articulation, which is more than the original had, and lastly, you've got his lower legs, which, due to the wide feet, offer plenty of stability. Plus, there are these holes in them that allow one to put him on the surfboard. Now, in the original, it had some ankle articulation, and we have lost that, but I think it was a fair exchange for it allowed for better stability, and plus we got so much new articulation that losing 1 point wasn't really all that bad. Overall, I have to say this is an excellent reimagining of the Toe of Fire in system form and does a good job capturing the feeling of the old guy, but sleeker and in a modern twist. Now, in terms of some criticisms I've heard, some have complained that this version of Tahu has added gray slash dark gray to the color scheme in the form of mixel joints. And yeah, that is noticeable, but I didn't personally mind, as they are very neutral colors that kind of blend away. I have heard it said that these pieces must be those exact colors for quality concerns, but I do wonder if that's another instance of how, mechs couldn't have knees phenomenon, when it turns out they actually could give them knees at certain points, but just chose not to. And I do wonder if in the future they'll probably figure out a way to get around that, as they always usually do with enough time. Overall, though, I love this set. It is a beautiful love letter to Bionicle, the franchise, as well as the fan base, as it not only is just a simple recreation of a classical set, but also added things from non-set material like Takua, who was never an actual original Matoran and instead was mostly seen in video games, mocks, and the original movie, and the Emoji Circle, which was only seen in the Monog original year online web game. Plus, they got Greg Farsty to write a short message in the beautiful instruction manual that I mentioned earlier. Greg Farsty being the one who basically wrote all of the lore and stories of Generation 1 Bionicle. Though they also misspelled his last name and fired him shortly after writing this, so one can debate how much the LEGO community really cared about him or this set, but that's a story for another time. Regardless of that, I think this set is great and very important, as it was released 13 years after the end of Generation 1 and 7 years after Gen 2. Some ask why I don't do more Bionicle set reviews, especially since I do have Bionicle sets in my review intro, and it's quite simple really. I don't have them in box, and that's it. And I do like the photo boxes when I review stuff, and despite that, I've always loved this theme, and I don't viscerally hate new things that some more extreme members of the community do. The biggest issue I have with this set is not necessarily with the set itself, but that it really didn't go anywhere. Some thought that maybe we'd see more, maybe a full-on Gen 3, or at least the other Toa Mata would be made in the scale, and while I'd love to see Gali or Lewa for sale, and I'm not, saying that it isn't possible that we won't see more, it's been 2 years after the original release, and yeah, they never really materialized anything else. Likely due to low sales that were the result of it being a gift with purchase, instead of a standalone release where it probably would have done better. Regardless, this is an amazing set that you should get, even if you're not a Bionicle fan. That's just a solid set regardless. That's worth a buy. I'm the Dark Master, and if you liked this video, you liked it. But if you love it, consider liking and subscribing. And have a wonderful day. Join me next time on my LEGO reviews. Take care, everybody.